on the call other than the board members who might want to provide comments?
I am not seeing anyone, and I can attest that no one else is in council chambers but me.
Excellent.
And a planner.
Well, maybe we should
head in for no reason.
Maybe we should just start with the letter that you sent. If you want to summarize and share any feedback that you received, and then we can discuss the parts of it.
Yeah, and really, Travis, you were the only one that had feedback. I think you all saw the letter. I could share my screen, but I wouldn't be able to see you all. But yeah, Travis, your feedback was really putting a finer point on BEDAB's concerns around an additional mandatory cost and logistical hurdle. And then it looks like, yep, you put a finer point on the kind of compromise proposal from BEDAB around asking council to exempt homes in the last 2 or 3 cycles of the building code from being included. And just on that point too, I did talk to our building official and asked him how focused recent revisions to the building code have been on energy efficiency. And he said at least the last 2 have really been focused on residential energy efficiency. So he certainly got this notion of what BEDAB is pitching here.
But yeah, and whether that time limit is 6 years or 10 years, either one would provide significant relief from an overall requirement in my mind.
Perfect. Yeah, and they're released every 3 years. So yeah, 6, 9 years, either one I think makes sense.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, let's just open it up to all the board members to kind of discuss. The way I see it in 2 parts is, number one, we have to decide whether we have an opinion based on the feedback we've had from the business community. Do we have an opinion on whether the city should implement the mandatory requirement, or as per your letter, Ben, I think the first piece of feedback is we think it should be optional. And then second piece is if you still want to move forward with mandatory, then we think there's a softening that would alleviate much of the concerns. I think COBA has agreed that would be a significant step in the right direction, and still accomplish the meat of what the climate committee wanted to achieve, which is address the older housing stock. So kind of taken in 2 parts. So if we want to tackle that first part, does anybody have any disagreement with the stance that we are recommending we keep it non-mandatory?
I don't have any disagreement with that, but I do have a question, which would be, if the climate committee's kind of goal is to get participation, we want to make it not mandatory, would an opt-out versus opt-in be like further that goal?
I don't know how that would function. Kelly, do you have any more meat to put on that? You're kind of saying this is the rule, but we just make it easy to opt out.
Like for instance, in like credit scoring, there's like a practice called positive reporting where you can kind of opt out of reporting that looks negative on you. So I guess what I'm saying is like this could look a little bit like you're in the program unless you like raise your hand and say I don't want to be, which by default makes more people included than relying on people to be in it by volunteering to be in it.
I don't know if anybody else has any other.
The assumption is like you're in it instead of you're out of it unless you want to be. Just, yeah, I'll stop there.
So yeah, I'm not quite understanding either. So you're saying people are in it and then they can opt out versus making it optional?
So like it's not mandatory and you can opt out, right? But you would be automatically enrolled unless you opt out.
What I see as difficult to enact here, Kelly, with that methodology is the person opting in or opting out is actually the actor. So they're the ones that have to do something here, rather than say a government tax, which you would have to, somebody else is acting on you and you would have to opt out of that action that somebody else is taking. So I don't think there's a way this works.
Right. You're right. You say it that way. And I'm like, no, that's right. This doesn't make any sense. All that you still have to opt in effectively by like reporting because no one can report on your behalf. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Strike
it was
that
kind of just
record.
I like thinking outside the box though. You had me stumped for a minute. So it's really like mandatory or optional. We're leaning on optional. Does anybody have a problem with that position?
So I just want to be clear, is there any option, because we were talking and it's in a letter about if the house is older, then, I just think if it's optional, then it's toothless. I get what they're trying to do, but I also recently doing some renovations to my house and getting up to date on all the current codes. They're pretty good. So any new house would probably qualify. And this might, I get the point of putting an undue burden on already a taxed housing system. But, just having it be entirely optional for everyone seems, I don't know if that will do anything for the houses that we do need to pay attention to that are older.
I don't disagree. The adoption will be much lower. What we're doing is providing, this is the prescriptive mechanism if you want to have a home energy score, but you're not going to be required to.
Mm-hmm. Well, can we require it for any house that's over X amount of years old?
So that's the option for sure. So in the two-step process, what you're getting to is get to that second step. Yes, do require it in the first step and get to the second step and make it applicable only to older homes.
Mm-hmm.
So
well,
from
that's
what I'm
what the
hearing
rule is, Tierney. It is planned on being mandatory. Mandatory for all housing stock.
Mm-hmm.
So our question is, are we okay with it being mandatory and that it applies to all housing stock?
Well, yeah, I totally get, I'm actually not for it being entirely just blanket mandatory because I agree with the letter and the housing stuff. I'm just trying to suss out if there's any middle ground to recommend here. Because entirely optional also doesn't, I'm not excited about that so much either. So,
yeah, I guess I'll say, since I pulled together the letter based on that conversation on Monday and some conversations with some of you that couldn't attend Monday's meeting as well, it was kind of two steps, right? The first one was at least the conversation on Monday would prefer that the program is not mandatory. But indications from council so far have been that they're supportive. So council, if you're going to move forward on this, option number 2 or suggestion number 2 from BEDAB would be exempt some portion of new homes, right? Whether it's 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, folks that have buildings, I should say, that have fallen under that newer building code. Does that reflect kind of where everyone was landing on Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
And you're right in stating that. I think what I'm hearing from Tierney is you're actually in favor of a mandatory requirement for some subset of homes, which older homes.
mm-hmm.
And,
well, I guess I don't know. I get the restrict. I'm not really for a blanket mandatory thing at all, but I guess I think also just saying it's optional. I don't know if that will do anything that also doesn't seem great. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the middle ground might be.
Do you think if it's optional that then the market kind of drives it? So as people are looking for homes, if they want to go toward a home that has the energy score and they want to know what it is, then it gives them the choice to work with someone or not, if they don't have that information provided.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that we do have more housing stock lately. No, I mean, we're still, our housing stock is way too low, but I could tell, watching the market, that there are more houses on the market than there have been. So, maybe it would be fine. but I guess, since we still just don't have enough housing here, I don't know how much the market's deciding that much of anything with an optional requirement, but it's not a hill to die on for me, really. I don't want to put undue restrictions on the situation either. I'm just trying to figure out what we might recommend as sort of a middle ground.
I think to your point, what I keep trying to remember or think back on is what are the priorities and goals that city council have and what do we have as a board? And that's where I think I fall in the non-mandatory, just as the letter's written, because I think city council is higher priority is affordable housing and providing enough housing. So if this does any detriment to that, that doesn't necessarily align. And for us, it's more about businesses and how sort of that economic piece of it. And that this could also affect that in a negative way. So again, leaning towards the non-mandatory. So that's sort of how I rationalized my personal feelings of thinking it's a great idea, but not making it, but then also agreeing with sort of the discussions we've had of not making it mandatory because of those goals and those priorities. I had to sort of put
I think
filter on it.
I'm in agreement with Brianna in that, yeah, I'm all for, fixing the climate. I'm a believer in the science, all of that stuff. But, what is going to be the larger effect? Are we going to have a larger effect on the environment by somehow getting these older houses, brought up to more current codes? Or are we going to have a bigger effect on the cost of housing in Bend and Central Oregon, which is an extremely important thing to business and the community? And, frankly, I think we're going to, we have a chance, or there's going to be a much larger effect on the housing market than there will be on the environment by bringing these houses to speed. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, and also I was mostly thinking about it as a consumer, like, when you buy a fridge, it's like, this is how much energy your fridge will use in a year. You buy a car, this is how much the gas is going to cost. Just so from, forget about the earth for a second, like as someone who's trying to afford a home, knowing if your home, like how much the energy is going to cost for the home is something that would be helpful for you to know. So yeah, I mean, I'm totally like okay with the letter as it stands and fine with it not being mandatory, but like, I think we need to think about just the consumer a bit. I guess the optional would get that done.
Yeah.
Well, from what go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well,
I think
Brianna, yeah, I think we did. And I appreciate your input in particular. That was helpful. So I think we're at the point where, Ben, I think that the minor revisions that I put forward were just kind of stating our case. I don't know if there's much need to go over the detail of the change in the letter. So if anyone wants to put forward a motion to approve the letter as drafted by Ben with maybe some minor edits, and we vote on that motion.
Perfect. And just for the record, so Gina can get it in the minutes, I think the two key components were BEDAB is in favor of a non-mandatory program. If council creates a mandatory program, exempt some portion of new homes, right? Whether it's the last 2 iterations or 3 iterations of the state building.
I would move that we approve a letter urging council to move it to a non-mandatory program. And if they will not do that, I would move that we suggest they exempt newer homes, maybe 6 years and newer.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second, Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda. All in favor of issuing this letter as feedback to City Council prior to their meeting tonight, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, I think the motion passed 6-0. Thank you very much, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks all. Travis, I'll clean up the letter and put a signature or your signature on there and send it your way.
That sounds great.
Perfect.
Happy holidays all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.